University of Maryland just had 6 players taken in the 2025 NFL Draft. That's the most from the school since 1986. I'm going to break them down right now and really talk about, do I think they're going to make the Week 1 roster? And what kind of impact could we see them make as a rookie? What's going on, guys? Six Support here, back with another video, and this is going to be my final video before my training camp preview. And I wanted to have a little fun with this video. I'm a Maryland fan. I grew up watching the football team since I was in elementary school, and because this is the most players I've seen taken from this school since I've been alive, just wanted to talk about them, and really, there are some interesting stories with some of these players. So that's the reason I wanted to make this video. And I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. Alright, let's break this down with Ty Felton, who was taken in the 3rd round by the Minnesota Vikings. And I said there were interesting stories, and Ty is no exception to that. Ty tore his ACL in his junior year of high school, and the schools that were talking to him basically stopped. They basically stopped except for Maryland, and that's the reason why Ty ended up committing and signing with the Terps. If he never tears his ACL, he probably goes to Virginia Tech. That's what a lot of people have said in the past, that really Virginia Tech was the school to beat at the time, but then he tears his ACL, and Maryland was the only one that stayed loyal. He rewarded that, and Maryland got rewarded with one of the greatest seasons by a Maryland wide receiver ever. He broke the school record for most receptions in a season with 96. He is second with receiving yards and receiving touchdowns in a season, and is in the top 4 in catches, yards, and touchdowns by a Maryland wide receiver for school history. Yeah, that was a pretty good signing by Maryland. And Ty is a guy that is over 6 foot, that runs a 4.3, and on multiple occasions is able to turn a short pass into a long gain. We saw him do that a lot last year for the Maryland Terrapins. And for Ty, this is a perfect complement to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, 2 very, very dangerous deep ball threats. How many times have we seen that happen? Now you got a guy that can take short and intermediate routes and turn them into a long game. Yikes, that's kind of scary. Now Ty, he's going to be essentially the 4th option at best, because, like I said, you have the 2-headed monster of Jefferson and Addison, and then you have TJ Hawkinson at tight end. So, at best, he's going to be the 4th option as a rookie, and he's going to be fighting against Jalen Naylor, Rondale Moore, and Tim Jones, really for playing time. Ty, he's almost guaranteed to make the Week 1 roster. He's almost guaranteed. You rarely cut 3rd-round picks. You'd have to be extremely bad to be cut. And Ty, he's just a talented football player, so I'm expecting him to make the 53-man roster unless, of course, an injury happens. But what kind of impact can he make? That remains to be seen. Sometimes with wide receivers, we see them make the impact right away, and sometimes it takes a few weeks or a few years before they're really adjusted to the NFL. So we'll see what's going to happen. But really, for Ty, I am rooting for this kid. Ever since I saw his high school highlights, I've been high on him, and yeah, he was just a great Terp. You want to talk about loyalty? You talk about Ruben Hippolyte. This is somebody that committed to Maryland, and then later on kept getting offers from bigger schools, including at one point Alabama. And yet, he stayed loyal, and he signed with Maryland, and he ended up being a starter there for 5 years. He signed during the COVID year. This is somebody that is a very fast player. At 6 foot, over 230 pounds, he ran a 4.4 at his pro day. A 4.4 for a linebacker. And that's why the Bears drafted him in the 4th round. And really, Ruben did a lot of good things in Maryland, but there are some holes in his game. We did see him miss a few tackles, and you really have to wonder, is he going to be able to handle the speed at the NFL level? I know he ran a 4.4 at his pro day. He didn't run at the he didn't even go to the combine. Anyway, there's going to be some questions as to how his development's going to go. But if there's one thing that we know about the Bears, They are great at developing linebackers. All right, they are one of the best throughout their entire history, whether it's Doug Atkins, whether it's Dick Butkus, whether it's Mike Singletary, or Brian Urlacher, or Lance Briggs. Chicago knows how to develop their linebackers. Now, really, he's going to be fighting for the backup spot to Tremaine Edmonds in his rookie season. For fourth-round picks, I am comfortable in saying I think he's going to make the roster. I think he's talented enough to make an NFL roster, talented enough to be the backup as a rookie, get in there when Edmonds needs a break or if he gets hurt. I'm comfortable saying that. For him, it's like I said, for linebackers, how can they adjust to the speed of the game? That's going to be the big thing with him, making sure that he doesn't miss a lot of tackles and making sure that he can diagnose plays right away. That's the big thing with Ruben Hippolyte. But really, this is somebody that has kind of played with a chip on his shoulder ever since high school. Like I said, he committed to Maryland, and then he kept getting offers. That's what he wanted. He kept wanting teams to see how good he was, but he also didn't forget that Maryland was the one that wanted him in the first place. And again, he played a lot at Maryland. Did a lot of good things at Maryland. Now, can the Bears take this guy that has a lot of playing time in college and develop him into a starting caliber linebacker in the NFL? Can they do that? If he does that, the Bears may have gotten a steal out of this draft. I talk about draft steals, and Jordan Phillips, who the Dolphins took in the 5th round, might be one of the biggest ones when it's all said and done. Now, he was one of 3 defensive linemen taken by Miami, with Kenneth Grant in the 1st round, and I believe Zeke Biggers was also taken in the 5th round by the Dolphins. Yeah, so Phillips is 6'2", 216 pounds. He transferred to Maryland from Tennessee, and he's only 21 years old. All right, he was a redshirt sophomore when he declared for the draft. And that's 316 pounds? That's all muscle. He already has the size of an NFL defensive tackle and the strength of an NFL defensive tackle. Now, the reason he fell to the 5th round was because it didn't always show up on the tape. All right, Phillips did not have the season that a lot of Maryland fans expected him to have as a redshirt sophomore, but I think that's understandable because, like I said, he's only 21 years old right now. A redshirt sophomore, you don't really expect redshirt sophomores to have big seasons, and yet they did out of Phillips. Now, the big thing with him was he never recorded a sack as a Maryland Terrapin, but his upside is through the roof. And this kid is a hard worker. Maryland did a little bit of a documentary on him, and you just saw him hard at work in the weight room and doing all the things that he needed to do to get ready for the season. So this kid has got a good head on his shoulders, and you have to root for him. You really do. Now, for the Miami defensive line, there's a reason they drafted 3 defensive linemen. All right? They needed help. Now, Kenneth Grant, we can expect to play right away as a rookie starting week 1. But for Phillips and Zeke as well, they're going to have to show that they can get on the field early. And like I said, for Jordan, it's not really about getting NFL strength and NFL size. He already has that. The thing with him is just going to be the on-field production and his technique and everything else that goes along with being an NFL defensive tackle. If he can show that early on, and like I said, he is a hard worker, so he's going to make sure that he does everything he can to try to get on the field early as a rookie. If he develops and Miami does everything right with him, not only can we see him be one of the surprise rookies out of this class, he might be the biggest steal from this class if he lives up to what the talent could suggest that he might become. All right? Keep in mind, 21 years old, and that kind of upside and everything else, it's pretty impressive. Dante Trader is somebody that signed with Maryland to play both football and lacrosse in 2021. He played lacrosse his sophomore year, and that's also the same year where he was a starter in Maryland secondary, and he was there for 3 years. Now, Trader, he's more of a strong safety than he is a free safety, and he's a little bit undersized. He's just under 6 foot at 5'11", and he's just under 200 pounds at 196. But this was somebody that did a lot of good things during his time in Maryland. Now, when it comes to the run game, that's really his strength. You put him on obvious running down situations, he can go up and make a play for you. It's his coverage skills that really is the big question mark with him, and with him being a little undersized, he's going to be able to cover tight ends. That's really the big question with him. Now, he's going to be battling Patrick McMorris for the backup strong safety role. I am comfortable saying that he's going to make this roster. When it comes to how much playing time we can expect him to have as a rookie, I think it's just really going to depend on how he looks during training camp and how he looks during the preseason. If he can show that he's going to develop pretty quickly and become a good safety, and I think he's going to be a good safety in the NFL. I do think he's going to be a good safety. If he can show that right away, he'll be on the field in no time. But if he needs about a year or two to develop, we will not see him as often as with the other scenario. Really, for Trader, it's just about his performance during everything when it comes to training camp and the preseason. That's really for him. But like I said, I'm comfortable saying I think he's going to be a good safety, and I think he's going to make this roster. 6'3", 204 pounds, and runs a sub 4.5 at the combine. That's what Caden Prather did. Now, Prather was Maryland's number 2 receiver the last 2 years, and he put up respectable numbers. If it wasn't for Felton, he would have been the number 1. Now, Caden, at times we have seen him make some very amazing catches, but he's also had some issues with drops. But I don't think that's a hands issue, that's probably more of a concentration issue. The fact that he lasted to the 7th round honestly really surprised me, and it seems like he's impressing the Bills already. Now, he's going to be fighting for that final receiver role, if you ask me, because I think the top 4 are already set for the Buffalo Bills. Well, Khalil Shakir just got a contract extension. Joshua Palmer just signed a 3-year deal with the Bills. Of course, they just drafted Keon Coleman, and there's one other receiver that I'm completely forgetting. I'm probably just going to put it right up here because I'm serious. There is another receiver that is just escaping me right now for the Bills. Yeah, so he's probably fighting for that final receiver role. I think the big thing for him is, can he make an impact on special teams as a rookie? If he can do that, more than likely he's going to get that final receiver role. Do I think he's going to make a big impact on offense as a rookie? Probably not. Like I said, the top 4 are pretty much set for the Buffalo Bills. But down the line, if he develops, again, he's 6'3", over 200 pounds, runs a sub 4.5, and can make some very great catches, and he avoids the drops. I mean, we could see him as a starting receiver in the next 3 or 4 years. Really. Maybe even sooner, depending on what happens with this Bills receiving corps. So yeah, I think Caden Prather, I think he's a lot better than what you normally see from a 7th round pick. Okay, so we talked about Jordan Phillips and how he has this great upside as an NFL player, but he was not Maryland's best defensive lineman. That was 7th round pick Tommy Akingbose. I know I butchered that, and I'm sorry. I'm just going to call him Tommy A from this point on. But Tommy, he had a really good season for the Terps last year. And it was a season that I think went unnoticed because Maryland's defense wasn't great, but he was. He was amazing for the Terps. Just made a lot of great plays. Now, is he going to be more of a run stuffer, or can he do more in the passing game? That's the big question with him. But with Tommy A, this is a former 4-star recruit that really grew into the starting role that he got. I really like Tommy, and I think he can be a very good pro. I think he could probably develop into a solid starting defensive tackle in the NFL. He's 6'4", over 300 pounds, had a very good 40 time. I think he was top 10 at his position at the Combine. So really, for Tomier, if he can make this roster, we could see him really outperform his draft position. All right, I want to talk about the undrafted rookie that signed with the Kansas City Chiefs from Maryland, Glendon Miller. Miller was Maryland's probably best defensive player the last 2 seasons. All right, this is a kid that when he signed, he was a hard-hitting safety that there were questions about whether he was going to stay at safety or whether he was going to bulk up and move to linebacker. And oh my goodness, he really developed his coverage skills. He was better in coverage than Schrader was last year. I mean, this is a guy that the last 2 years led the Terps in interceptions. He had 7 interceptions the last 2 seasons. And really, Miller has just been a wonderful development player that Maryland got. Again, a 3-star recruit, didn't know if he was going to stick at safety, and yet he does, and he excels. And now he has a chance to be the backup free safety for the Kansas City Chiefs that just lost Justin Reed in free agency. Yeah, I really like Glendon Miller. I'm rooting for this kid. I don't know if he's going to make the roster or not. It's tough for an undrafted rookie. However, I'm not going to put it past him. I just love Glendon Miller. I really do. All right, guys, those are my thoughts on the Maryland rookies. And as I said, my next series of videos is going to be my training camp previews. I'm going to get those started right away. Football season is almost upon us, people. As always, I'll see you next time.